If you're doing the same show in the same track 8 times a week for potentially 2 years, if you don't love performing, don't do it.
Yeah.
That is my most brutal advice.
Yeah.
Because you have to love giving yourself and being selfless to that audience. And I think that that's super important to take that into the audition. Because if you don't have that self-belief of, oh, this is exactly what I'm doing, this is who I am, then they won't see it on the panel.
Yeah. We're humans with so much capacity for the love of so many different things. And I'm a big believer in being passionate about as many different hobbies and stuff as you can possibly do. Because we're born creators and we're born to do as many different types of things that can set you on fire. So don't feel like your performing is every single thing, because when you're in that full time, you definitely feel like it is everything.
And you will just combust.
And be okay with, when you're in the industry or still finding your way in the industry, to be okay to go to yoga or take that pottery class or whatever it is for you. I think it's gonna, like you said, really help ground and support you. And when you do go and perform, you're actually more present there. Welcome back, everybody, to the Dive podcast, where each week we interview professional performing artists as we discuss their stories and dive deeper into learning how to navigate the challenges we face as artists. Today we have Bronson Pfeiler in the studio with us. He is one of my bestest friends, and I know you're gonna love him. I love him so much. He's currently just been accepted to be on West Side Story on the Harbour in Sydney, and at the time of filming he was in Mamma Mia the musical. So he is in the industry, he is fabulous, and I can't wait for you to listen to this episode. Radio, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're here.
I know, it's been a long time, any excuse for us to be together.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Definitely in your life you get a lot of different friends that come along, but you meet some of your best friends, and you're definitely that to me. So
totally. When did we do Charlie? Was it like 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
And it was only for like 3-4 months. Such a like flash in the pan in terms of like the scope of a career, but I still have endless nights being like, where's my Taylor? What's he doing?
It was definitely a showman's for sure.
Oh, and it still is.
It's still, we're out of shows together, but we're still in it.
Yeah, you always like, I'm a big believer of you should only be able to count your friends on one hand, the people that you can trust to the depths of your soul.
Yeah.
But I also am such a loudmouth that I think everybody also knows those friends. So like, even in the cast I was just working with, like, if they don't know who Taylor is, at least they can associate it with whoever Bronson is. They're like, oh, you're Bronson's friend that he always talks about. I'm
there
like,
you go.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being on. It's an absolute treat, and I know that everyone's going to get a lot of value out of hearing from you today. Before we get into about your career and a few of the topics today, I'd love to paint a picture, as we do on each episode, of, you know, where did it all start for you?
Where did it all start for me? Well, country kid, Mount Gambier, South Australia, born and raised. My sister went to a dance class when she was 4 or 5 at the time, and I was 3, and I just turned around to my mother and I was like, so when do I start dancing, Mum? And she was like, are you sure? I was like, yeah. And definitely in my hometown at the time, it was like dancing or footy. There was like no in between. It was AFL or you danced. I loved both, but I definitely loved the stage, and I really didn't turn back. I think my mum, like, I love my mum to death. She obviously knew that I loved it. I loved being on stage, being an absolute idiot. And yeah, I've been dancing since I was 3, singing or taking classes since I was, I think, about 8, and started deep diving into acting probably as a teenager, when I could probably understand more concepts of life.
Sure.
And when you start to question what the world actually is. Like, I started deep diving into more character work. Then moved out when I was 17 to the big city of Melbourne. Then went straight into full-time Ministry of Dance and did a musical theatre course under Deb Mitchell-Moore, who was director at the time, and obviously Jason Coleman, who's the big head of that full-time course, and learnt a lot from all of them. And then into the big wide world, trying to find myself as an artist.
There you go. So you always kind of knew that you wanted to do performing?
Pretty much. Like, I still remember, like, even when I did year 12 at high school, the head of secondary, he pulled me in and he just looked at me, he's like, why are you doing year 12? Like, why are you doing these like complicated subjects at the time? We know you're going to be a performer, so why don't you just leave now? I was like, oh, my mum and dad said I need a backup job just in case being a performer didn't work out. So I just had to do that grind. But yeah, I always knew deep down that I was going to be a performer for life. Like I was at a Lutheran school at the time. I was singing in every choir. I was singing all the Christian songs at the time. And any extracurricular activity that involved the arts in any form, Bronson was a part of it, and he was the confident little boy at the front.
That's so cool. And so then you went straight to ministry after year 12?
Yeah, pretty much. Again, such a supportive mother. I love her to death. In the last 3 years of my high school, she actually drove my sister and I to ministry every weekend.
Wow.
So we'd finish school on, I think it's like,
And how long is that, just for people?
For context, yes, Mount Gambier to Melbourne, if you don't stop, I think it's about 4 hours, 40 minutes exactly. But you say about a 5-hour drive. But yeah, we'd finish school about like 3:30 p.m.
Wow.
Drive to Melbourne, stay over the night at a friend's place it used to be.
Your mum must be so happy that you have pursued it.
Good riddance, right? Imagine like after all of that, I was like, I just want to like do dishes for the rest of my life or something. Like just want to clean.
Yeah. Maybe you didn't notice at the time, but having that support taking you there, how did that affect you in taking the performing? Or did it help you take it more seriously, or?
I think it definitely helped me take it more seriously. I'm very aware now that my mum was just an avid dance mum and was vicariously living through her 2 children.
Sure.
Which we also love, but it definitely helped me focus. And I think the one benefit that it gave me as a teenager was it did make me quite busy, that I didn't really have time to make mistakes at the time, and that could work. Well, that worked in my detriment, but also as a positive too, because it helped me really hone in on the skills that I wanted to become a performer and just make the mistakes as you do in your adult life instead.
And then when you went into ministry, how long were you there for, and what was the experience like for you?
So ministry, I did junior school for 3 years very loosely, like in a part-time structure, and that was trying to go across all basic skills of different forms of dance, singing and acting. And then I did the full-time course in musical theatre, which again is very similar to like high school hours. We were there from, I think we were structured at 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. I believe.
Wow.
And again, across all fields of dance, they would always bring in industry professionals at the time, whatever skills they had. And we, as the musical theatre course, we would branch out 2 days a week, and then we would deep dive more into script work or vocal work, or we also had our own showcase as well. We didn't do a specific musical, but we would definitely showcase and find our own musical numbers that helped, that we thought brought the best out of ourselves during that year at the time. But yeah, that's the broad scope of what it was.
Yeah, and did you find anything challenging? You were in Mount Gambier and then you were travelling for performing, and then all of a sudden you did the big move, which is a big commitment, to then say, all right, I'm going to do this. Was there, we all know that there's challenges along the way, but was there anything specific in your training that challenged you, and how did you navigate your way through that?
Yeah, it's always challenging, obviously, trying to find yourself as a human being going into early adulthood. But the hardest part, especially as a 17-year-old moving away from home, is understanding when to do the laundry, when to do the dishes. How much income do I have to make per week to cover all costs of living, of rent, utilities, as well as doing a full-time structure? And that's when you actually have appreciation for your parents being like, how the fuck do they pay for all their kids at the same time?
How did it actually even...
How does it work? Like, I remember that as a young adult being like, this is hard. And I did the hustle as many young adults do of, I think I worked at Schnitz for 3 years outside of full-time till 1 a.m, sneaking avocados in the fridge because, you know, gotta eat, that's right. But yeah, a lot of understanding how your body works, how you work as a human being, trying to find the rhythm to get you out of bed each morning, find what your motivations are, understanding if you're going to that 3rd ballet class for the week and you hate ballet at the time, how do I find enjoyment through that?
Yeah,
it's
wow.
that constant battle. But Sue Ellen has a great statement that she always says that I have tried to adopt is discipline is freedom. And as long as you can always hone in and focus on that discipline, it will do nothing but free you for your present and your future.
Wow. That's awesome.
So again, I wish I had known that in full time.
Yes, of course.
Because I didn't learn that till a couple of years ago. But yeah, it paid dividends, trying my hardest to at least enjoy the practice and the rigors that full time brings.
Yeah, having that discipline helps you have structure, which helps not only your mental or physical state, but having that structure and the discipline really sets you up to have those strong foundations. Would you agree?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And I wish I remember, there's a phrase that's escaping me at the moment, but the most important thing in your lifestyle is having actionables that are just become reactions or become a part of your everyday being, where you don't really have to think about too much, because there's only only so many choices a human being can make per day before we get exhaustion and fatigue. So if you can just have that natural practice of I'm getting up, I'm pushing my body to this extent, I'm doing this, I'm doing that class, I'm making this call to this producer, I'm making sure I get up and I practice my vocals, and if it just becomes rhythm, all of a sudden you make less choices each day.
I once heard, actually recently, about habits, and you hear about habits as this kind of fleeting, nice thing that you wish to adopt. But when I was recently reading, it was telling me that start to change your habit into a ritual. So instead of having a habit which can be mundane, something that you're trying to achieve, if you're making a habit into a ritual, they say all you need to do is intentionally create the habit, and that will create a ritual for yourself.
I love that. Use the behavior, make it into a cult, and then you believe in it, and then you want to do it for the rest of your life. And that's humanity.
Woo! That's it. So then you trained, and what was your experience like when you finished training? Did you perform straight away? What was your kind of experience like?
I was very fortunate. I was a scholarship student during full time, and they gave me quite a bit of flexibility. So I actually started working during my second year of full time, and then I was juggling between going on tour and finishing all of the assessments that I had to do in between contracts, because they were only little month contracts. And my first job was Paw Patrol. I was a professional dog, which we love. I went and see
it. I saw that, right?
I think you did.
I definitely did.
Yeah.
In Melbourne.
Because there's two
Was it at the
separate
comedy
shows.
theatre?
Yes. I think you
that.
saw the pirate one, which was the second version.
So
I
good.
jumped onto Race to the Rescue to start with. Yes, I was Marshall, the fire pup, the Dalmatian. The best one. He's a very gorgeous dog. Bless him. He is the neurospicy dog of the bunch. He's there to make everybody laugh and also let them know that it's okay to be goofy and silly and be your authentic self.
Yeah.
So very on brand for Bronson. But yeah, it was really nice jumping onto that. And it is kids theatre, but also performing in Rod Laver Arena as a dog. It's a very weird concept, but I couldn't ask anything better for my first gig, because it taught me so much about how the industry operates, but it also kept me so humble, kind of actually being behind this giant puppet, because you still have to do all your skills of singing, dancing, acting, and puppeteering, which I had to learn on the fly. But ironically, you get none of the accolades. It's actually the dog. And that was a gorgeous experience for me to start with, because it really helped strip my ego away to start with, being actually, I love it because of the art and bringing something to life.
Yes.
It's not actually about... I got more enjoyment knowing that there was 3-4-year-olds screaming at a dog instead of me.
Yes.
But I was the one that helped create that for them.
Yeah, wow. A lot of it's creating stories.
Totally.
We always talk about on stage, and actually having play characters is one thing, but be inside a character and see
literally inside this puppet, and your head can peek out.
You couldn't be more in depth into a character than being in a suit. And
you just see this random bobblehead at the back, why is there a human inside the dog? Anyway, I digress.
And so that was an amazing experience. And recently you finished up with Mamma Mia the musical and had a chance to swing. Was it the first time you had swung?
Yeah, first time I've done an offstage swing plot and had to cover potentially, it was 7 roles, unless things got super dire, as you are aware as a fellow swing. You never know if there's going to be more on the table.
Don't know.
But yeah, so Mamma Mia went for 8 months. We did Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, and I went on 71 times out of 215, I think.
That's still quite a bit.
Yeah, it's about a third, so a healthy number.
Yeah.
But yeah, swing life is so different to doing the 8 shows a week, that's for sure.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit more about that. I feel like any show, whether you're even just not swinging, going into it, you're always going to learn new things and you're always pushed to your extremes. But now going into swing brain and swing town, how did you manage that when you went into the process?
Totally. How did I manage it?
Was there any kind of were you writing it on paper? Were you on the stage right? The app? What were your...
We had the general consensus of this software called Stage Right, and I'm not sure if the audience is aware, where it's basically It's this fantastic app where it basically just shows the stage plot with what the set is, and you just get to move your little doohickeys around and who your cast members are.
amazing.
And, it's a godsend. But 5 out of the 6 swings had that, and Lily Balderstone went to the old school paper writing method.
I mean, you can't beat the...
I guess, well, I believe you can. I don't know how she did it. She is a formidable unit, that woman. But yes, so did the stage right and went in, and I did what I call cheat sheets. So I loved to plot a table and specify what the character did, what harmony they sung, what booth they stood in, because we had booths off stage.
Oh, wow.
If there's any important things like, do you lift a principal character,
Yes.
or do you hand a prop over, and if there's any backstage stuff. And that, I like my cheat sheet because I can just quickly check it, dot point,
So good.
get on stage.
That's it.
I never did the swing Bible, which is another structure, which I think a lot of the other swings did, which was basically write a bloody 25,000 word essay document on everything that person does. I am not that person.
And that's wonderful. I've been a swing for a long time and worked with so many other swings, and there's still today, I'm amazed by what works for different people.
Totally.
I've had people where it's all just drawings. Like, it's all drawings of the stage and the set.
Such
and they're
visual learners, right?
Super visual. Or it's just speech. I've had someone that's done it on audio. When they've gone and learned in the rehearsal room, they're going around with their phone going, so-and-so's jumping on chimney right with their right hand, right foot, and has recorded everything so that they know, and that's how they learn. So it's either audible or visual, but
you just kind of learn on the fly as well.
Yeah,
hey? Like
you learn quick what doesn't work.
You learn bloody quick. The one unique thing for me that the rest of the cast didn't do too much, like I was known famously in our first month in Sydney for shadowing. Lewis Shilbuck, bless his soul, he's beautiful. He made us all a fully black onesies with a little Mamma Mia logo. So I used to literally hide in my black onesie with a black face mask, and I used to just be this floating eyeballs. But I used to love just shadowing and staring at what was happening on stage. And for me, that comfortability of being immersed in what it felt like and seeing it, that was my equivalent to the swing Bible, because then feeling present or understanding the space and the dimensions really helped me.
Yes.
That, and I am quite a maths nerd. I loved my physics and my specialist maths in high school, so I really do well with like formulas and patterns.
Yeah.
So if there was ever a big dance number, I don't need to know what that person does and write it down by detail. It's more, the second and fourth row will kick to the left instead of the right, and then that consequently does this and this and that. All the male identifying characters will look to the right in that part. And so instead of knowing what that role does, it's more me then being on stage, feeling the space, going, so this is my choreography for this part, and just feeling it that way.
It's quite literally piecing a puzzle together.
There's always a puzzle in here. It's neurospicy. We love it. It's just like always feeling the room.
That's awesome. Going into kind of more some simple top tips, for example, if someone is watching or listening, they're about to be a swing and they maybe don't know how to kind of go about it, what would you say your top tips that worked for you have been when now having done a swinging track?
Totally. First of all, it's fucking scary, but it's the most fulfilling thing I think you can do as a performer.
Sure.
My top tips, what I have now learned, is body conditioning as a swing is so different, and I argue harder than doing it 8 times a week. Because as being an ensemble or principal, you train your body to do whatever your track is in the exact same spot, moving the same body parts every night or twice a day. Whereas being a swing, it's so inconsistent and volatile, and your body is constantly trying to figure out how to survive.
Yeah.
So don't be scared to go into the physio sessions if you need it as a swing. If you feel like, I haven't done many shows. No. You have the hardest job physically.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing I learned on the fly. And one thing, this is also going back to the mindset that I try to enter with, and I'm a big believer of this as a swing, is try to go into the show with no ego or no expectation that you being a swing is going to make you stand out or make you a name in the industry, if that's what you're hoping for. The swing role is not that. Your job is to be the water to the fire. If you get through a show and then you don't have any notes at the hour call for the next one, you've done your job successfully. Yep. You're there to just make sure everybody is safe. And
you're helping that puzzle. You're literally keeping that running business going forward and getting on.
Totally. And I think going in with that intention helped me so much, because it helped me then...
It took it away from you and made it more about how can I help? I'm here for the show. I'm here to support in any way I can.
And then importantly, it made me think, what do I actually care about right now as a swing in this show? Like, what's important? And it's about supporting the people that are around you, to making sure that the audience is moved. For example, making sure that they enjoy the 22 songs of ABBA. You know what I mean? Like, making sure we can drive Gary Young's story home. Yeah. So that they all leave feeling changed and moved, and instead of being like, oh, that guy with the long curly hair was over dancing so much, it pulled me off the story. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they're probably my big tips that I had or have learnt if I'm ever going to swing again.
Great. Now, going into a little bit, you mentioned about creating structures and foundations that will support you, particularly more so when you're not in work financially. I know a lot of us can struggle when you're in the show, all of a sudden you have this income and you're loving life.
We love a per ditty.
Or
a cash allowance. It's very nice.
How, in your own opinion, your own words, have you found to find that financial stability when you're not in the show?
Totally. I think this is super important, because as we know, like, being contract performers, we are on this full-time wage, which is fantastic, and then get taxed at a full-time wage, even if the contract's not 12 months long. That's a story for another day. And then, we do have these months or potentially years as a specific artist not getting income. And I think it's so important to figure out what your balance between your lifestyle and your business is. Right. Understanding that, great, you've got income coming in when you're on the show, but being a human being in a Western civilized culture, there's always outflow in that bank account. Yeah. And the big thing that I learnt is avoiding lifestyle creep. If anyone doesn't understand what that means, that's when you get a bigger income and you all of a sudden start earning more, you're more likely to spend more too. And it's about what I do. Again, this is not like personal financial advice, all disclaimers. When I do get more of an income, or if I'm on tour at a specific time, what I do specifically is I invest it. Again, super boring, I know, but it helps you so much in your future. And for me at least, if I then cut the wage in half or by a third or whatever it is and just invest that and put it away for the long term, I can't touch it. Yeah. So then all of a sudden I'm keeping...
So you're not tempted in any way?
Yeah, and then I'm living within a means that I know I can control outside of the contract. And again, you can divvy that up however you need. For example, I know there's saving accounts where that have like 5.5% to try and match inflation, yada, yada. And that's a great avenue if you're just a great saver instead of wanting to invest it, if that's too daunting. Yeah. Again, see a financial advisor. I do also recommend that. They're fantastic.
Make finance sexy.
Finance is so sexy.
And you'll be better off if you start now. If it's your first show, definitely go and enjoy, buy that bag, whatever, but you will 100% regret it if you don't start now.
Absolutely.
Even just start learning about it.
Yeah, and ask questions. Like, again, this is not a sponsored podcast, but I also love the Equity Mates. I am an avid listener to all of their stuff, and they are just these two Aussie blokes that had a passion for finance, and during COVID they created their own podcast, and now they've got a huge media platform specializing in all forms of investing.
That's awesome.
So if you just deep dive into their content, I guarantee you'll at least learn something.
Yeah, well, we can add that into the show notes for anyone that's wanting to learn a little bit more.
Totally, not sponsored, but I am a huge advocate
that's all
for
good.
them.
Yeah, we're all about helping people on this podcast, so anything else that we can give. There was a wonderful man named Glennie James. He's from Sydney, I believe, or Newcastle in Sydney, and he's been a financial advisor for so long. Great. And he created this book called Sort Your Money Out.
Nice.
And it's so awesome if you're an Australian. He puts it into Australian lingo, like adding Vegemite and just like things that you will be able to understand in a way if you just feel like finance is just a completely other language. Definitely check him out. I'll add it in the show notes. He has a course as well. He has a few on there where how to buy your first home. But Sort Your Money Out, there is this spending plan that is so helpful. It's all done for you. Just put in what you earn, what comes out, and shows you where to sort your money out. So definitely check that out. I strongly recommend it. It changed completely my financial situation. But yeah. Thank you.
That is sexy. It's so important. The other thing, I guess, in association with obviously having control of your money, which is honestly what we all want as artists. Is early in my career, before I started doing the longer contracts or the commercialized musical theatre side of things, I did a lot of like commercial corporate work.
Sure.
And again, that really has helped me as well in between my contracts. It's
finding
like
that other work or other streams.
Because I made a big decision in my life of I want all of my income to be solely performance, or at least involved in the performing industry. And I made that shift around 2018. And it was that concept of trying to make sure I had my finger in as many pies as possible. And it's really nice when you get to the end of a contract and being able to make those certain calls to certain directors or producers or people that even run tiny little corporate companies, being like, hey, I'm free across the Christmas season. What gigs do you need me for?
Making those connections.
Absolutely. And I think that's also super important. So then you can 100% still focus on being a performer.
And I guess that probably taught you a lot about branding yourself and marketing yourself, which I wish was a subject in full-time, how to brand and market yourself as an individual.
I can rant about this for weeks.
Well, maybe we can have you on again for another episode. We could talk about as many topics as we like.
I'm getting a business boner as we speak. It's a shame that full-time courses don't talk about it more.
Yeah.
It's understanding that we are artists, but we're also business people.
Yes.
Like, we are our product.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can talk about that another day.
For sure. And feel free to check out our website, www.thedive.com.au. We'll have lots of free resources, both on finance, mental health, all the good things to help you out as much as possible. Now going from, like, we've dived into swinging, how to financially support yourself, I would love us to talk a little bit about seeing auditions as a place to perform other than seeing it as a test. A lot of people and listeners on here have been struggling with, okay, they obviously want to get the job, and we all know that's important, and that's why we're there.
Especially in Australian musical theatre industry. Brutal.
Yes. Brutal.
Yes.
How would you recommend or advice you would give on going into an audition and loving it for what it is and performing instead of that having that self-criticism creep in and let it deter you up?
Totally. I've got two angles, I think, to support this argument. I'll start with like the business perspective. I remember early in my career, I really cared about the commercialized musicals, like because that's what I really wanted, and I was tunnel vision on it. And I, at the time, didn't care as much for cruise ship contracts. It wasn't really where I was wanting to go, but I was going to them anyway. And what I noticed was I kept getting to the end and booking all these cruise ship contracts I didn't actually want, and was really struggling to even get my foot through the door in a lot of the contracts that I was actually really wanting. And I remember analysing and being like, why? And it was ironically, I realised if I give too much of a fuck about it, I get worse. So fundamentally as a performer, like if you want to eliminate your nerves, if you can have that freedom of actually going in and just enjoying the performance.
Taking the pressure off yourself.
You 100% will be so much better as a performer. And I have also been on the other side on a casting panel before, seeing people, and oh my God, it's when you see the nerves, it's really hard. You feel sorry for them. They're not being the best version of themselves as a human being. So first of all, yes, go in and enjoy it, and just go in with no ego, no nerves, no stress. Easier said than done.
Yeah.
I'm very
Is
well
there
aware.
any tips you could give on how to do that? Because it's really great saying go in with no ego, or is there anything that you even personally do that could be simple that someone could do to alleviate those forms of stress?
Breath work is fantastic, and I have no doubt that you have many tips and advice on how to do that, so I'll leave that to Taylor. Another thing that really worked for me, ironically, was actually going up and talking to my friends that were there as well. And again, everyone works differently, but I found like I sang better, I danced better when I didn't really think about it.
Sure.
Because like you do the warm-ups and you do the prep before you get there normally anyway, and absolutely do the work to make yourself feel confident. But when I'm there, enjoy connecting with human beings.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Bronson, you're in, you got to sing like, oh, great. And then that kind of whiplash effect of that's suddenly being in, I guarantee you'll have the adrenaline you need to do the job.
Well, I guess you probably more yourself. You're more yourself because you've had that experience and you're talking to some friends that maybe you've even trained with sometimes. Yep. That's great. That's wonderful advice.
And then going back now to, I guess, my other angle of making sure you enjoy an audition is this is maybe an unpopular opinion, but I'm a big advocate for, in this industry, if you're doing the same show in the same track 8 times a week for potentially 2 years, if you don't love performing, don't do it.
Yeah.
That is my most brutal advice.
Yeah.
Because you have to love giving yourself and being selfless to that audience. And I think that that's super important to take that into the audition. Because if you don't have that self-belief of, this is exactly what I'm doing, this is who I am, then they won't see it on the panel.
Yeah.
And if anything, it could be a blessing in disguise if you don't book that contract for minimum 14 months and it's battering your body until you can barely walk because it turns out you're an Oompa Loompa on your knees. And you're like, oh, I don't need kneecaps for the rest of my career, that's fine. But you know what? Seeing those kids laugh at this Oompa Loompa being silly, like, that's the fulfilling part and that's what drives you, but you're still going to hurt your knees 8 times a week. So I think, yeah, it's super important to go in and love the work. And it's also, I'm a big believer of, it's okay to go into an audition and if you're not liking the work, that's okay too. And use that to empower you to be like, maybe this isn't what I want for my career right now.
Maybe it's just that show, or
Like, I remember auditioning for Mamma Mia. Like, I went into the audition, like, caring for the job. I'll admit, I'm not the biggest ABBA fan. But then Tom Hodgson's choreo was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I loved that choreo.
I mean, the show was incredible. I got to see it and see you shine on
that
stage.
choreo slaps. But I think Tom saw me enjoying his choreo, you know, and that goes hand in hand with casting. It's like, if you don't sell what they're giving, they're not going to hire you.
Yeah.
So I think they're my 2 big beliefs. It's try to control the adrenaline as much as you can, eliminate the nerves in whatever way suits you.
Yeah.
And always remind yourself fundamentally why you're doing this as a job.
Yeah. Which is for the love and for the joy of it. And we are amazing performers and artists that we are doing something that we really love. And I think remembering that is super important, because a lot of people out there are sat in office and maybe that's amazing for them and they find that same joy. Definitely not for me and many performers out there. But yeah, definitely it's been a running thing actually on this podcast that it does require that love, because having that love equals into the discipline. You will get up when you don't feel like it, because it's just in your soul, that discipline, because you really, really do love it. And if you're in a place now where you're maybe not loving it, maybe some time away from performing is something that you need, and that's okay too. But something, that I've been seeing and hearing from a lot of people is that it really does take your full self of dedication, love, and work ethic to make this performing career work, and it's absolutely worth it.
Oh, totally. It is a religion. We're all borderline psychopaths because we just dedicate so much of our lives to it. And it's great and it's fulfilling, but it's hard. But I wouldn't change it for anything else, honestly.
Great. Just to finish up, I'd love to just ask you this question, and please feel free to answer as little or as in-depth as you like. We all in life go through different challenges and things that test us, but for you personally, what would you say your biggest challenge has been in this amazing career that you've started and created? From, just to finish up, I'd love to just ask you this question, and please feel free to answer as little or as in-depth as you like. We all in life go through different challenges and things that test us, but for you personally, what would you say your biggest challenge has been in this amazing career that you've started and created? From performing and getting driven to class by your mom, like this whole kind of full circle picture. What would you say your biggest challenge has been throughout this whole entire process as an artist, and how did you overcome it?
Time to get deep with Bronson Pfeiler. The one thing I struggle with, and still do, I would say, is probably just relationships in general. And because I am quite a homebody in terms of, not essentially I need to be in the same place, but I do love my stability with my people and trying to have regular access to them if possible. However, being the artist that I have been and the career that I've had, years upon years where I live out of a suitcase and I might be in Paris for 3 months, or I'm on a cruise ship for 3 weeks, or I'm in Sydney for 5 months. Like, you're constantly traveling and moving, and it's really hard also living in a country where we have this Australian dream of buying a patch of land, having a job from 9 to 5, 5 times a week, with the partner, raising the kids, having the dog. A lot of those things we sacrifice as artists. And if you are a person that really needs that stability in those relationships and the longevity of those relationships, it's going to be hard. It's not impossible, but there is give and take that comes with that. And I made the decision a long time ago to really put myself first in my career, and that has definitely created a lot of volatility with all of the relationships that have come in and out of my life, and sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And I like to think now that I definitely have a social structure and a personal life that is so complementary now to my work, and it's really nice to have that. But it takes years of practice and figuring out who you are and what you need as a human.
Because a lot of people find it really hard to balance that performing life and personal life.
Totally.
Do you have any advice on that, on finding that balance? I mean, it's definitely going to be different for every single person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, is there anything that you could suggest or give advice on that, on finding how do you balance both of the things?
The one thing that really, there was two things that really helped me was finding something that you're crazy about that isn't performing. So when you need that time to completely separate, you're crazy about something else.
Yeah.
That really helped me. And again, it's not something, and that thing that you're crazy about doesn't have to be that lifelong commitment like performing. It's like, I think every year I have a new hyper focus of something new that I really enjoy, but it just gives you that separation when you need it. And the one thing that's really helped me in the past year as well, and it goes in correlation with this whole separating from the industry concept, but I now have a really good handful of people that I can hang out with and socialize with that are complete muggles to the industry.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, oh, cool, you're in a musical, Mamma Mia. Oh my God, I love ABBA. And that's about all they know. But it's so nice and almost refreshing. Yeah, like some people like work in the coding industry. I couldn't tell you anything. Like, they work with zeros and ones every day. That sounds fun. But just like having completely new concepts always thrown at me that I can think about during my day. And I found that super humbling.
Great.
And not becoming that performer that gets so consumed with the industry, or like what auditions are coming next, what show is coming next. Oh, that person booked the show and I didn't. Why? You got the show, you got a job, fantastic. I'm going to go hang out with my friends and talk about Bitcoin or something. You know what I mean? Like, that really
I guess it helps ground
me.
you as a lot of the time too.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's that constant reminder of we are the lucky ones and we are the traveling gypsies. Get paid a full-time wage, which is unheard of. And it's a constant reminder to check in and be like, wow, what we do is so surreal.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
That's awesome, because I know when you are in full-time, you're with this group of people that are all doing the same thing. So when you do go into the industry, you feel like you have to see everyone in the show, and on your day off, do day trips with the company.
And you got to hang out with the whole cast and go to the winery.
With every single person, but that is so refreshing to hear, and I hope listeners can hear this, and I completely agree with you. My partner is completely not in the arts. I was the first performer he'd ever met in his life.
He has this fantastic plant.
Yes, if you're watching in the studio.
He has a plant business. What's it called? We need a plug.
Hell's Plants. We'll add it into the show.
Fantastic, in the show notes.
But yeah, it definitely does help ground you, and I hope that it inspires people to go and look out for other people. We're humans with so much capacity for the love of so many different things, and I'm a big believer in being passionate about as many different hobbies and stuff as you can possibly do, because we're born creators and we're born to do as many different types of things that can set you on fire. So don't feel like your performing is every single thing, because when you're in that full time, you definitely feel like it is everything.
And you will just combust.
And be okay with, when you're in the industry or still finding your way in the industry, to be okay to go to yoga or take that pottery class or whatever it is for you. I think it's gonna, like you said, really help ground and support you. And when you do go and perform, you're actually more present there.
Totally, because then you've done a full U-turn in your day and you're like, oh great, I'm on stage.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, it's been awesome having you on. I'd love to ask you the final question that I love asking everyone who's been on the episode. And that is, if you could give yourself some advice when you were starting your career, what would it be?
Ooh. If I was talking to my 17-year-old self, put all your money in Bitcoin while you can. But no, if on a serious note, if I was talking to my really young self that just loved the concept of performing, I would have said, you're on the right path and stick to it and be patient with that knowledge. I think, again, another saying I think you said to me a couple of years ago that I now hold on to is, what is meant for you won't pass you by.
Yeah.
And take comfort in knowing that, but make sure you have the patience with that knowledge. What is meant for you will not pass you by.
Yeah.
And stay present, because it will be gone and you will be old and have arthritis. And you won't be able to do that triple pirouette again. So enjoy it every time you need to.
Oh, awesome. And where can people find you? We'll add every bit of information we can about you and where to find you on our show notes and website. But for any listeners that may be driving or whatever, how can they reach you?
Totally. I'm a bit of a nomad. I'm not highly on all the social media, but I do have Instagram _ Bronson Pfeiler, Pfeiler for the last name. Yeah. Very German, I'm so sorry. But that's probably the easiest way to contact me if you need any personal questions answered.
Yeah. And you can always reach us at info@thedive.com.au with your questions. We'll get them over to Bronson, and we can even answer some questions in future episodes to come.
Perfect.
Great.
Can't wait.
See you then.
Yay!
Thank you all for listening to today's episode on The Dive. If you have any questions for myself or Bronson, you can email us at info@thedive.com.au. For free resources, you can also head to our website at www.thedive.com.au. Also checking out our blog posts that are updated weekly, talking about the tools and tips to help you as a performer, to help you move into the industry with confidence and passion. It's been a pleasure to have you on The Dive today. And if this episode has resonated with you in any way, feel free to share it with a friend. And if this is your first time coming to The Dive podcast, we have a whole bunch of other episodes that you can go ahead right now and listen to. So I'll see you soon, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.